welcome, and thank you for joining me. This video is going to be a little bit different where we're not going to get into Salesforce org, but I recognize that a lot of are in the same process of either going through an Agentforce implementation or discovery. So I figured I shared some lessons learned and sort of like a template that you can use if you are in the same journey. And this is by no means a one size fits all. Discovery can be very unique depending on which stage you are in the process. But hopefully this can be a good guide for you if you are feeling completely lost. So I'm going to be sharing different stages and maybe some templates that you can use. And since I can keep talking about this forever and discovery is such a large topic to cover in a video like this, I'm going to use this PowerPoint as a guide for me just to keep me on track. Okay, let's get started. As I said, a discovery can be very unique to your own project. And it doesn't matter if you're a consultant or you are an internal employee, I still suggest doing some sort of discovery. And it doesn't have to be this 6 month process. It can be a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks. It really depends on the complexity and size and how much you're trying to tackle. So first things to ask yourself is, what is the purpose of your discovery? Depending on where you are in this, you might already know some of this. Like, it's really important to understand what promises were made to the leadership. So you might be in one of these three buckets, right? You might be in the exploration phase where you don't even have Agentforce licenses yet, but you just want to explore and see what use cases are there. And if you are in that boat, this is a great place to start because you want to make sure you are actually finding the value of the tool. You're not first buying the tool and then figuring out the ROI. You are doing the right thing and you're first of all trying to figure out, do you have use cases for Agentforce? So that's the great place to be in. But sometimes what may happen is that may not be in your control, and maybe your company already has bought Agentforce. Some promises were made to the leadership, and now you have all these Agentforce licenses, and you're like, what am I supposed to do with this? So you have to ask your leadership, what was the promises that was made, whether by Salesforce sales team or consulting company, like what was promised? What was the ROI? What did people promise when they're selling Agentforce, right? What are the use cases that we are tackling? So, just because somebody bought Agentforce doesn't mean they already have use cases figured out. You have to understand, are there actual use cases that have been talked through? And if all of those things have already been talked through, great. You're already a step ahead. You already know where to start and what to tackle, and you can get pretty granular with those use cases. But if you don't even have the use cases, that would be the place to start. Then once you start getting your use cases, you want to have some sort of map. There's this chart that comes to mind. You either have high impact, high complexity, that will be a really big ROI. You're going to get return on investment, but it's also going to be really complex and long term. Maybe this is the good place to be at. You have something really high impact, but pretty easy to build. So that would be something I would focus on for my first release of Agentforce, just to get the excitement and the momentum going. And if there are so many ideas flying around, awesome, but you can't tackle everything at once. You have limited time and resources, so you want to prioritize the use cases. And KPIs, honestly, be very clear on what those KPIs are, because it can be some vague words that you can't really measure. If somebody's telling you the KPI is, oh, I want to reduce the average handle time. Well, how do you measure the average handle time? Like, do you have a measurement in place today? And then are you going to be able to measure it in future? You have to be very clear. Otherwise, once you go live, you're not going to be able to figure out how do we measure it and did we actually make any difference in the average handle time? Just as an example. So be very clear and ask those questions ahead of time to avoid any headache later on. What could be some risks? There is definitely risk involved, right? Like, risk could be like, it's a brand new technology, we have a lot to learn, we don't know much, or it's Gen AI, like we don't know what the answers you're going to get. There could just be risk that you don't have data yet, like you're not there in your organization to be able to do all these cool things that your clients might have seen in demos. So all of these things could be good to call out in the beginning. All right, now that we are aligned on the purpose of your discovery, these are typically the outcomes that I like to see when I am done with the discovery or throughout the process. And not all stakeholders are going to care about this, but as someone who is going to implement and build these things, you need to have a plan in place. And to have those plans in place, you need to be asking the right questions. So it's good to have some sort of goal for your discovery so that you can ask the right questions and build towards those goals. So one example is, I need to have the detailed use cases. That also means, what data source am I going to need for those use cases? what is my architecture diagram going to look like? Do I have enough information? Do I need integration? Do I need to go hunt for data sources? What tools within Agentforce am I going to use? How much time is it going to take? So all that comes down to use case. So if the use case are complex, obviously that's going to take longer. What are the resources and skill sets needed? Do I need a developer to build some Apex classes? Do I need data cloud resources to ingest the data? Do I need integration resources? So all of those things have to be in play as you are going through a discovery to be able to come up with a cohesive plan. And then what prerequisites are needed? Sometimes, you might realize that we are not there yet. We need to do a lot of pre-work to be able to actually get some value out of Agentforce. Maybe you need to build those integrations and data first before you get into building the cool, fancy Agentforce. So all of these things you should keep in mind as you're conducting the discovery sessions. All right, now let's talk about what the plan would look like. And I'm going to preface by saying this could be very different based on where you are in your maturity journey. And I'm going to just assume that you already know the client or the stakeholders and you have some information about the personas, but let's assume that you don't know much. And so I want to go through the step by step and what the different phases are. If you already know a lot of these things, then you can skip to the end and go to the step that applies to you. I'm going to assume that you are starting from the beginning. Okay. So the step one is stakeholder alignment. The goal here is understanding the strategic goals. We already kind of talked about this, so I'm not going to spend too much time here. And then you have to identify the impacted user groups because this is going to come into play later. So, because then that's where you're going to focus all your time and energy. So it's important to understand the impacted user groups. So these are the questions you can ask, but feel free to add your own questions. Next, I would say is current state assessment. Goal here is to understand for those impacted user groups. So let's say you identified, we are for phase one going to focus on the sales side. We're not going to focus on service right now. Okay, so what does that mean? What are they using? We need to understand their existing tools and how the work is done. What does their day-to-day look like? And this is where you're going to talk to maybe the Salesforce team that's already in place. You can talk to some of the super users. And basically, you're trying to just gather all the existing tools and create some sort of Excel sheet or whatever documentation. If there is an existing process design document, then you can review that as well. Identify friction points. Where is the gap? Are they using some other AI tools already? Because we are focusing on Agentforce, which is why calling out AI tools. And then the output here is current process map. If nothing was provided, chances are you don't have a process map, and then you can build it based on your activities, tool inventory, and the pain points. So this is your current state assessment. And this is not honestly specific to Agentforce. We do this with every project, big project that we're trying to do. Then we have to understand the workflow. I'm calling it agent workflow because my assumption here is that we're focusing on the sales agent here. Here, the goal is to capture the actual behavior. It's different from documentation of the process. Here, we're trying to capture the actual behavior. So the best way to do that is shadow. Just be on calls as people are doing their job. It's mostly observing what people are doing. Look for how long are they doing each action for. You can do timestamps because this is going to be useful for later when you're trying to do the KPI. You can say, okay, they took like 10 minutes writing this email. And if you're going to use something like Agentforce, like email generation summary, then maybe we can say, okay, now we save 10 minutes, we change that to 2 minutes. All they need to do is tweak some things and boom, your email is ready to go. Those kind of things is what you want to look for, in terms of showing the ROI. Look for other tab switching patterns. Are they going back and forth from one system to another system? Are they switching context too much? Are there manual steps needed before reaching out to the customer by looking up data, copy pasting information? So anything that you find that you can think of can be improved by using either Agentforce or just other automation tools. Honestly, keep your mind open as you're going through this because you never know what you find. You might find a lot of problems that can just be solved by simple automations and not even Agentforce related. But keep your eyes open for those things as well. And then here the output is some journey maps, what the agent does in each systems, and then detailed notes on the pain points, and maybe some ideas of your own and things that you can take back and start to ponder over, like what could your solution design look like. So all of this is kind of feeding into your final output. Next one is needs and pain points. Now we're starting to think about future. What problems do we want to tackle? Gather all the different pain points that you gather and start to talk about what are the things that we want to focus on. You can also bring like a user group. You can bring the different super users in a meeting or send some surveys. There are different ways to collect this, but you want to ask questions. It's usually helpful to keep it open-ended because sometimes you will hear different things and perspectives from different people. So I really like surveys for this because it just allows people to freely type and give their input to you. So, what's the most frustrating part of data entry? What slows you down? What do you wish systems could do for you? And ask for ideas. And if you have your own ideas, you can also share that in a call. And pro tip here is if you already have done observation, and if you can quickly spin up a POC, maybe use an Agentforce developer org or your own org and show some cool demos, and that could get some ideas going as well. It could also be some low fidelity prototypes or screenshots. However, you want to convey your idea to the users. This is, I think, the right place to do that as well, so that the users can start to think, because sometimes they don't even know what is possible. And so just going in and asking, what do you wish the system could do for you? That may not really help because they don't know what's possible. So it's helpful to guide them. And almost everybody has used ChatGPT or some sort of GPT at this point. So you can just ask, hey, would you like to have your own personal ChatGPT in Salesforce? You can summarize all these things and just show them ideas and get them excited. Here, the outcome is, what do we want to prioritize? You might have so many different themes, try to categorize them by themes, and then we want to go back to our stakeholders and prioritize which one have will, and go into that bucket of high impact and low effort is what we are focusing on. All right, now that we have our current state assessment, we went through some agent workflow observation where we uncovered the pain points and what the users might need in future. Now it's time for the exciting stuff to do future state design. And the goal here is to define what the Agentforce product future could look like. And some outputs I typically see here is a mix of functional and technical documentation. So that would mean solution design, like how are you trying to approach this? User stories, more granular. I want to do this so that I can do this. That format, what is the use case we're trying to solve? And architecture diagram that includes things like where is the data coming from? How is it getting integrated or ingested? What tools are we recommending? So all of that kind of is the output for this, because this is where we have a clear view of what the solution would look like. And I recommend some workshops here. This is definitely not a full list, but just to get you started, user experience design is where I would come in with some proof of concept. Like if you have two different ideas, but you're not quite sure what makes the most sense, bring up some examples. It could be like a prototype, like a sticky figure, or actually in Salesforce showing different tools that could solve their use case. You want to have a mix of different types of people to have a balanced view here. And then data and architecture. Let's say if your use case is, I want to be able to see and summarize a customer history, but you don't really have the data for all the customer history in Salesforce, then where does that data come from? Do we have an ERP system, a knowledge base? We need to gather that data. And so you need to find who those people are, who the owners of those systems are, who owns maintaining that data, archiving the data if needed. How is that getting into either data cloud or some other form of tool or ETL? What's needed here? You need to talk to the right people and connect the dots. And I think this is where it takes a lot of time, especially if you have an enterprise org and data is all over the place. So don't underestimate how important data is going to be in an Agentforce project, especially if you're trying to hit those high impact use cases. And privacy and security review, I cannot stress the importance of having this early on, because if you don't involve your privacy team or the security team ahead of time and you don't have your green light, then your project might get delayed. Typically, if you already have the licenses, that means maybe your team already went through the review process before procuring the licenses from Agentforce. But if not, just make sure that you have the green light from your privacy team, because it's a new technology and there is some element of data passing. So depending on the industry you are in, this might be really important for you. So do this ahead of time and you will thank me. And analytics and measurement. So this is also really important because you want to involve the right people from your analytics team and who are interested in getting the KPIs. Basically, think about future, right? Agentforce is live. You have all these things. Now, what's happening? How are we measuring it? Are we running Salesforce reports? Are we doing some other sorts of measurement? Are we sending surveys? Like, what is your strategy to measure whether the project was a success or not. Right, so that completes the 5 phases within discovery. We have stakeholder alignment, current state assessment, agent workflow confirmation, reviewing the pain points and asking questions, and then future state design. So I wanted to share some templates that might be useful for the use cases documentation. So let's talk about that. To start the use cases, you have to think about what are the jobs to be done. And in this scenario, I'm thinking about the agent itself. Could apply to anything, but what are the jobs? Like, is your job to research customers, maintain customer relationship, answer policy questions? Think of them as jobs to be done. And I'm specifically talking about agent. So let's imagine you have like a little co-pilot or an assistant on Salesforce or external, internal. And what are the jobs that you're trying to do? Because this will help you define what the topics would be like. And I'm going to share an Excel template as well. But think about in terms of jobs to be done. Keep that in mind. And then here are some framework that you can use. So just saying I want to research customers is not enough. That is the job that you want to do. But then here's the framework. When, I want, so that. So basically, when sales rep asks for a customer background, I want, what action do I want to take? Agentforce to ask for customer information and find information about the customer from multiple data systems, right? So somebody's asking the agent, like, tell me about this customer. The first step is obviously for me as the agent, in this case, digital agent, to ask for the customer information and then find that information. That's the action. And the goal here is that sales employee can save up an hour time per customer because they're going digging the information, typing up the email, whatever they're doing, right? Like that's taking time. So that's the goal is here, time saving. Now you have to attach all these things like data sources. We said multiple data systems. Well, what are the data sources? Is it an ERP system? Are there other like commerce platform? Whatever sources are there, write this down. Agents. Within the agents, what actions? So we already talked about actions, and those are the actions you want to type it out here. What not to do as well is super important. Think of that jobs to be done becomes your topic within the agent. And then within that topic, you're going to have your action and instructions. And actions is where really you're going to spend a lot of time. These are the meats and potatoes of your agent because without actions, you can't do much, right? So actions are important, and then you're going to figure out customer standard action and what level of effort they are. Now, to make it more real, I wanted to share this Excel document. Let's imagine this is a sales agent, and there are certain jobs to be done. One of the job that needs to be done is researching the customer and asking for policy questions. And this is how I would start writing everything in this Excel sheet so that you can convert them into user stories and figure out what are the things that's needed and how much time they're going to take. So let's say the first thing is I want, when the sales rep asks for customer research background, I want Agentforce to confirm the customer and then find all the customer related from various systems so that they can do this. Here are the data sources that I need. CRM, I need opportunities and cases. From ERP, I need order history. From commerce, I need purchase order. So data sources can be your own like 3 different rows here because we need information from all these things. Actions, what are the different actions we need? We need a flow action of some way or Apex action to get the order history from either the ERP or data cloud. We don't know that yet, but still we know that we need something to get that data. And maybe for the opportunities and cases, things that are in Salesforce, we can maybe use the standard action. So maybe we don't need to build a custom action. What guardrails do we need to put in place? Now, guardrails typically just mean you have to put that in the instruction itself or the topic description. And also start noting down what are the questions. And this is where you're going to start to find the right people to talk to for your future vision workshops. Is the ERP and commerce data available already? Is it going to be easily available if it's not, or do we need to have a substantial project just for that? Can this be done in phases? Are we okay to just have opportunities and cases for the first phase, or that's not going to make a lot of difference and they really want all of these things to make it worthwhile? So these are the questions you need to be asking. Let's say sales rep asks a policy question on a specific product. So now we're talking about more of like helping the agent get answers faster. Maybe they have like this 1,000-page document of policies that they have to review every time somebody asks a question. So when sales rep is looking for a policy, Agentforce will answer the questions from this thousands of policy document so that they can save time. Now, data sources here could be maybe they already have knowledge articles, or maybe the policies are stored outside in some SharePoint, and we need to ingest that somehow. So these are the questions to ask. How often do they get changed? Who is the manager of the policies? Can we upload it into Agentforce data library? How, if it doesn't get updated frequently, then maybe we just do a one-time upload. Are the policies in a way that we can get answers from it? There are so many questions you can ask just on the documents. Then what actions do we need? If it's knowledge, then maybe it's a straightforward answer questions with knowledge standard action. Or we can ingest the data into Data Cloud and use ADL prompt template. So you start to kind of document these out, and so on. So you can keep going and pretending to be the client and start writing out what the use cases are. So these use cases are still not granular enough to be able to say how long the project will take. And it is an art and science. Just by doing this, sometimes you might say, okay, I think this is going to take 6 weeks. That's just gut and based on your knowledge. But having the estimates almost like validates your assumption because you don't want to be way off, right? 6 to 8 weeks is fine as long as you can say, okay, 2 weeks I need to just get the data prep. Maybe another 2 weeks I need for creating the actions in Salesforce, 2 weeks for testing, 2 weeks for deployment, whatever, training. So it's always good to have the granular estimate as well, just so you can validate it and you're not totally guessing it. So this is where in the estimates, we're going to start to write out granular details. So like action 1, we need to get customer info. Maybe it's a low level of effort because we are just confirming the data within Salesforce. Get customer orders. It's a medium level of effort to get the data, but here is a prerequisite. We actually need a Data Cloud DMO for this. So we also have to add that as a separate line item to be able to do that. Topic and instructions, I just bucket them because those take lesser time. However, they need to be built and tweaked and tested as we are building it. So while it does take less time, as long as you have your use cases defined, topics are easier, but you have to just know what actions to use per topic. And then don't forget the permissions and other normal Salesforce configuration that you will need to do anyway. There's pages, what flows, permission sets, etc. Next step to this would be putting all of this into like a project timeline. So starting with discovery, this is 4 weeks. Then we're going to do some designing and confirmation for 2 weeks. Then we're going to start doing the data stuff because that's a prerequisite. That may be 4 weeks. And then we're going to start building the actual Salesforce things. That may be another 4 weeks. UAT training and so on. So you get the idea. All right, I'm going to call it a wrap for today. Thank you so much for watching. And sorry, this was a bit long-winded, but I wanted to make sure I'm hitting all the points. And it's hard for me to not get into details for everything. So hopefully that was helpful. Please let me know if you have any questions or what stage you are in. And if there are other things that you found and learned through your discovery, please also share so others can learn as well.